Welcome to Reconcilable Differences. I'm Phillip George Jr. and my partner in crime is...
I don't know about the crime part, but I am Paul Smith with On the Move Team, coming to you live from our studios
I messed that up, didn't I?
in Cary, North Carolina. That's okay. You got me.
Yeah.
Keep rolling.
You picked it up?
Keep rolling. Keep rolling.
I missed the part about the On the Move Team. But either way, we're here. We're doing another episode for you fine folks. And today's topic is why get a home inspection?
It's wasted money. Don't bother.
I don't agree with that.
That's why we're here to reconcile, Phillip.
That's fantastic. So, number one, I'm just going to jump in here and just go ahead and get the teeth of the matter. You want to have a home inspection to have someone who specializes in inspecting properties, looking for red flags, whom you pay for, look at your investment. It's just prudent business.
I would agree.
Okay. All right.
Well said.
The other thing is that if you get a home inspection, instead of having ambiguity or unknown things, you have peace of mind that you've inspected that property and made sure that everything was okay.
Why would you buy something that you would not want to have a more detailed idea about condition or existing or potential problems? Why?
Yeah.
Why? Do I sound like Nancy Kerrigan there? You ready? Why? Why? You remember that?
Yeah. I do remember that.
Anyway.
So it's like buying a car and not taking it to your mechanic. It just doesn't make sense to get an inspection.
Yeah.
And a couple other things is it also gives you some validity to your repair request. When you go back to the seller and you say, hey, we'd like you to fix this, having that inspector notate it, a professional, then you add a little more validity, a little more weight to your request. And those defects also become material facts as well.
Well, you would expect them to,
yeah.
But yes, they should be.
That's right.
Yeah.
What's different when an inspector says something's wrong or when just your agent or the buyer says something's wrong.
Right. And first off, a home inspection is not a code inspection, although a home inspector may raise a question about the way something was done or the lack of something being done. That's okay. You know, as real estate agents, we can negotiate appropriately regarding that. We went through a period of time recently where folks were waiving any desire to do inspections because they thought that that would improve their offer.
Yeah. I never recommended that.
Well,
you might want to waive repairs. You might say, hey, we're not going to ask you to do anything, but you should always inspect the property.
Well, let's go down this road.
Okay.
Because I think that's a good question about how do we advise buyers and sellers about that aspect, okay?
Right.
Let's remember, and I have to do this with agents all the time, and sometimes I'm doing it with the listing agent if I'm on the buyer side. The contract in North Carolina says that the house is being purchased in its current condition.
Mm-hmm.
In conversations with the real estate commission, they interpret that as is.
Absolutely.
So there's no reason to write on an offer or a contract that you're buying it as is, and you're not going to do inspections because the contract says you're buying it in its current condition and the seller's under no obligations to make any repairs. Don't muddy the waters by taking away your buyer's rights.
Mm-hmm.
If a listing agent asks, well, will you waive inspections? You can answer that question, well, again, the contract says this. That's how we're writing this offer, all right? Whether we decide to do inspections or not, the seller always has the right to not do or agree to any repairs.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
That's
correct. Right.
Well, in the 2021 market, I seen them where they actually sent in the offer and sent in a signed due diligence request that said buyer requests no repairs from the seller.
And they make the due diligence period a day.
Yeah, it means
or like the same day you're submitting the offer.
But that doesn't mean that you can't still do inspections and make sure that you want to buy that property. Because again, you might do an inspection and you say, hey, I'm not asking any repairs, and you find out that there's growth in the house that you're not happy with, or there's a structural issue that you were not aware of that turns into a $20,000 problem. It's better to probably go ahead and terminate than eat with that property or see if you can work something out with that seller. So again, always inspect property, whether you're doing repairs, and again, like Paul says, it's as is condition or in its current condition. That's right, current condition. So the seller doesn't have to do anything. You as the buyer don't have to buy the house. And that's where the other round of negotiations comes in, and having a realtor that is familiar with this process and that has a strong negotiation trait is probably pretty good here.
Absolutely. It's, we sometimes forget the following, no matter what the market, all right, that we have a seller who wants to sell a house and we have a buyer that's contracted to buy a house, all right? There's a meeting of the mind somewhere if there's a challenge or an issue that comes up. There's a resolution, okay? Especially from the repair aspect. If it's a material defect in the house and the seller is made aware of it and is refusing to repair it and a buyer terminates, if they don't correct that issue, it has to be disclosed. And even if they correct it, I think there may be a question that might arise, oh, we see that this recent work was done, what was this? And then you have to disclose what it is, because you can't lie, especially if you have the listing agent.
And you also, if it's not repaired, keep in mind, and I don't know if this is clear to the public out there, but if something is not repaired, you have to disclose as an agent, whether your seller wants you to or not. We have to, as agents, disclose material facts or defects in that property.
And then, so the seller is to do 3 or 4 major repairs. The house comes back on the market, all right? And you disclose those. You don't think the new buyer is going to take those into consideration in their offer?
Absolutely.
Or request it to be corrected? Yeah, so the win for the seller is always the buyer that's currently in front of you. That's the one that's best to negotiate with.
Yeah, I always say it behooves you to work with them until you can.
Absolutely.
But it has to be something that is catastrophic that you just can't work
now,
with.
Due diligence money, that kind of muddies the waters a little bit. But we don't need to get into all that right now.
I got you. Also,
do a home inspection.
Yeah, do a home inspection because, again, you want to inspect that property and make sure you... And this is the other thing, to uncover hidden defects, you need a home inspector to do that. When you're trying to negotiate repairs, like I said, having an inspector, a professional look at it and have a report gives you more weight to start with. But this is the other thing. It also it serves to justify further investigation. For example, the home inspection is a, and I'm glad you pointed this out, it's not a code inspection, although sometimes I do quote code, but it is a for your information inspection. Hey, I've checked these outlets. They seem loose. You might want to have an electrical contractor take a look at them. Hey, your air condition does not have the proper temperature differential. You might want to have an HVAC company take a look at this. And I'm going through one right now that is exactly that case where they've done an inspection. They found the unit not working properly, and so they made some requests about that, and they're considering having an HVAC company go out there and really dig into it and check it out.
Yeah. Well, you know this better than anybody. Depending on the age, I'm looking at a house. A buyer makes an offer on a house, and we go into contract. When they're asking me to advise them on what inspections to be done, if the HVAC system or systems are, if they're in that realm of getting towards the end of their expected life, all right?
That's right.
Especially if it appears that way when you validate the age, it might be worth doing a AAC inspection right when you're doing the home inspection as well. Then you have all of that information to put together a due diligence request. And you know this because you and I have done the same thing along these lines.
And if you have older systems, it may behoove you to get or to have special coverage for that unit.
Ask for any records or documentation on service work that's been done, or a service contract that's enough for everybody some money, especially the seller if it comes down to repairs. It's like, hey, Mr. Seller, how can we help you make this work for everybody, including my buyer type scenario.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be adversarial. Although in part of our job is to keep it from becoming that.
Yeah. Our job is to overcome obstacles, and this can be one of them in order for you to close on your home, is getting through these repairs, negotiating something that's satisfactory between you and the seller. And if you're on the other side saying you want to do enough, you don't have to do anything as a seller, but you typically want to do enough to work with that buyer so that they buy your house and you can move on to your goal. The other thing is I'm going to bring up, I don't know if you thought about this particular when we decided to do this topic about why get a home inspection. This is something that I think we differ on a little bit. There's a portion of the listing paperwork, pre-market home inspection. I do not recommend that ever, okay? And I think you do depending on the age of the home. Is that correct?
That's a possibility, yeah, about having one done. I don't recommend that many times.
That's right.
Okay, I mean, there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
Right.
I never recommend it, and I'll tell you why.
share.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The reason why is because whether you get one done or not, and let's say that you get one done, you repair everything, you provide the receipts, you provide the documentation and the report, the buyer is still going to get an inspection. And that inspector is still going to find something. So my recommendation is to deal with one inspector one time in conjunction with the deal. And again, keep in mind, let's say that you don't repair everything that comes up on that home inspection. It becomes a material fact then. You have to disclose, which will affect your offers. So again, I tell you, don't go looking. I mean, obviously, if you know something is damaged and bad, take care of that. But I don't believe in paying an inspector to come in and add more stuff to my plate, and it has nothing to even do with the deal.
You know, this raises a lot of questions in my mind when we have this dialogue, all right? And, you know, because we all agree that one should be done, all right? But as far as a pre-market home inspection be done, all right? So let's talk about the material fact aspects for a second. I'm a homeowner. I know there's stuff wrong with my house. Whether I understand that to be a material effect or not. For example, my roof leaks at times, depending on how bad the storm is. Sometimes I have standing water in my crawl space, kind of thing, all right? I do have a foundation crack that's developed over the years after I bought the house, that kind of thing, all right? So I know about all this stuff all the time, but you know what? These are the same kind of things that that you're doing a pre-walkthrough before you list a house, you may or may not catch some of these things, all right? And if the seller hasn't shared these with you, they don't go down on the property disclosure as a disclosure item because they are or may be material facts.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
All right, so, okay. And I know you're not saying this necessarily, so no one does anything about that, and they don't do a home inspection to find out more about it, but you learn all of this stuff because it's brought up when the home inspection is done by the buyer. I think you have to use some logic when you're listening and you're having a dialogue with a seller. Does it make sense to get your hands around what some of the issues may be so that, number one, you can correct them by a licensed person, if you will, in an appropriate manner, or you can get quotes on what it would cost and use those in pricing and negotiation, or you disclose to a buyer that you're aware of this issue. Maybe you have a quote or you don't, but you intend not to make any repairs in that area and leave it to do after the fact. Then you're covering all your bases, especially from the liability standpoint. But I think sometimes real estate agents, and I don't think it's just here in our area, they don't connect all those dots for whatever reason.
I know, Paul, from my training and from experience, you're very thorough when it comes to this type of stuff. One of the things that we did cover on a different episode is red flags. So in the example that you were given, say structural, when you walk around the house and you see that there's a step crack and it's damaged,
or a stain on the ceiling,
or there's a stain on the ceiling, ask those questions and overcome that. Up front is a good thing for the seller and for the buyer. For example, let's say it's a structural crack. You go out, you get a structural engineer to look at it. Then you can provide that structural engineer's letter to the buyer. And let's say, hey, this is normal settling. It's not a big deal. Nothing needs to be done. It's going to be a much better conversation to have with that buyer or that potential buyer than, we don't know, right? The other thing is, let's say there is something that needs to be done, right? Then have it done. You know what I mean?
Fix it.
And then that way you can document the repair, what the engineer's letter said, and then you don't have that issue, and it shouldn't affect your offers like it would as an unknown problem.
I mean,
but that's a red flag. That to me is short of getting a home inspection, though.
You know, when somebody's sitting down with us or we're meeting somebody about listing their home, one of the 5 or 6 major things that we recommend is resolving known maintenance issues before the house goes active on the market.
Absolutely.
Why? For the basic reason that a buyer thinks they're going to cost 4 to 5 times more than what they actually cost to repair them, and that affects your negotiation strength. I'll put it that way, all right? I want to negotiate for you, my seller, from a position of strength where I can defend your price and the house as to the best of my ability, and that's one of the ways that we can do it.
One of the things that when you're representing a buyer, that you come into that situation where the seller has disclosed, documented, repaired the item. They have, like, go back to HVAC, they have 5 years of documentation from repairs or servicing and keeping everything
Yep.
together. That makes you feel much more comfortable as an agent and as a buyer dealing with the seller like that than somebody who has not maintained it and is not really sharing as much information. So I would encourage you always to get a home inspection. Do you have a
When
home
you're purchasing the home.
Yes, yes, absolutely. When you're purchasing the home, I don't recommend it for the seller, but I recommend overcoming red flags, though. But with that being said, do you have a inspector that you like to use that you would recommend?
Absolutely.
Who do you use?
Absolutely. I use Advantage Inspection.
Okay, that's who I use as well. Yeah, and I've been on both sides of their reports. I feel like they're pretty fair. They're not alarmist, that kind of deal.
No. And by the way, we attend our inspections.
That's right. That's
all right.
right. Yeah.
We hope our buyers attend our inspections. We are typically there, of course, at the end when the home inspector will give us a general review in lieu of having the report ready for us. Okay. And by the way, why do I like Advantage Inspection? Hey, look, I know Dave Parks and Glenn Lobzinger, very well. The owners. Okay. If I get a report or one of my agents gets a report and something doesn't seem to be explained or understandable, I don't quite know what they're getting at, I can reach out to them and either that inspector directly or Glenn or David will help explain it to me.
I've had Dave go to a place. It was a gas appliance, and it took him like 3 hours to find on where it was labeled that it didn't need a particular flue. Like he spent his time to go do that and check it out.
Is this one of these O2 sensor devices that it?
No, it was about the actual flue, like the how it was done,
whether it had to be
double,
fitted or not,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he found on the client,
What can you say about that? Are you kidding me?
And I'll tell you something
That speaks for itself.
And again, we'll have information, a link in the description about Advantage Inspection should you ever want to hire them. We have seen a lot of reports from a lot of different inspectors. I find Advantage to be easily understood. They have pictures that go along with it. I usually work off the summary, and it's pretty plain and just easy to follow for most folks, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
I've seen some where you had to go in section A, B, 1, 2, 3-4.
And they're accessible if there's something you don't understand. Or more importantly, your client, the buyer, reads it and doesn't understand. They're free to make contact with them as well. And
absolutely.
Explain, and I think that is helpful.
That's right. That's right.
This is what I wanted to mention. Our recommendation about always doing a home inspection, and we have other recommendations about inspections or investigations to be done when you're purchasing a home. If our clients are declining doing one, we make sure we document that on the professional services disclosure.
That's right.
We document what they've accepted to be done and declined in terms of accepted. Who the individuals are and who is doing the ordering. We document all of that for liability purposes.
Because if you choose not to get a home inspection, and I'm recommending it very thoroughly, very clearly, then that's on you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. Barring anything that was done, I guess nefarious, right? Barring anything like that, you're accepting condition. You're accepting that property, and so if you find something later, that's on you.
Most of the time, that would be true.
Yeah.
Yep. Well said.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to add?
Obviously, the names and the faces have been changed to protect the innocent, but I've had a real world example where they chose not to do one, and not 2 weeks into the situation, a major system went down, and they called me, and they were upset, saying, "Well, the seller knew this and the seller knew that," and I said, "Well, I understand that they may have." And again, I'm not going to get into that necessarily, but you know what? They would have known for a fact if they had done a home inspection, they would have known that system was not working or whatever the issue is. So
there was some question.
That's right.
Should be investigated further.
And again, you want to put this back on the seller as much as you can. And again, what I typically tell people, and I'll leave you with this, Paul, is that get all your inspection reports in. This is the way that I do it. I get everything in, and then we go through my buyer client, and I talk about everything, every item, and whether it makes sense to ask for it or not ask for it. And I tell my folks to pick your battles. There's things that are going to cost you money, things that are safety issues, Those types of things you want to key on way more than a sticky door.
Or a loose outlet cover.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I think you guys understand. Again, if you have any questions about home inspections or anything like that, about getting one, what to get, and again, we typically recommend to do everything that is applicable. For example, if your house that you're buying has a well, maybe get a water test. Make sure there's nothing in there. If your home has a septic tank, get a septic inspection. And I'll also say this, and I think you'll agree with me, Paul. Even on new construction, get a home inspection. Check every system that you can, because I've seen some pretty crazy things out there that passed the county that just wasn't going to fly long term.
Absolutely. That's a whole nother well, we have that conversation coming up here in a little bit, I think, about some aspects of what else we should recommend, and we do recommend.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that we covered a lot of this. But of course, if folks have any questions, they can feel free to reach out to us. Do you have anything else you need to add? I want to remind folks about obviously comment, and subscribe to Reconcilable Differences. And also remember, as always, good selling.